100 members. So he's experienced a lot of growth in our organization. He has served in many leadership positions in Kiwanis of Marietta, and he was voted Cobb County's Most Admired Community Leader in 1993. And I asked his wife Helen is here. He's got a daughter, Mary Margaret, and son, James Hap Harris. And he has several grandchildren as well, and they're quite cute. I've met some of them. I asked his son-in-law, Clem Doyle, for something interesting that maybe or funny that maybe our members would know about him. And this is the little tidbit that he shared with me. Are you nervous?
Yeah, as a son-in-law, that's done.
Well, it's innocuous. He said he played football and baseball at Grady High School under Irk Russell of UGA and Georgia Southern fame. And that is something that I would have known about you. So without further ado, Justice Harris Hines.
Madam President, it's always nice to be home. Like I said, Tom Wolfe said you can't go home, but it is nice to be home and look out. Truth be told, really, when several of us, as I look around at our table, started practicing law a long time ago, there weren't a lot of folks in Cobb County, and I said you could have a bar meeting, and it certainly, I wouldn't say you could get us all at 2 tables, but I could certainly say you could get us all at 3 tables here. And it's really a treat to be here. The president says something. Let me tell you about Irk Russell a little bit. I did play football for him. I want to say also, Bob Anderson, that this is when you get my age, your wife wants to travel with you, and I will tell you why. She is afraid you will say something that you shouldn't say, and just embarrass yourself and everybody. One time years ago, if you're a judge, you know how this is. I was invited to go speak at a law day, around law day at a church, and I thought I was going there to just kind of speak at a small class, of Sunday school class. And I got there and realized basically I was the 12 o'clock preacher or something like that. And that'll shake you up. And so I get out there, and Helen's sitting about where she's sitting now. And I mean, let me tell you, that was nerve-wracking. I don't mind telling you, you go to, that's not, my day job is not that. And I looked out there, and all of a sudden Helen goes, ah, like that. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous up here. Have I started speaking in tongues, or did I go to the men's room and not come out with my trousers on? I don't know. And so as soon as it's over, I run over here and I say, gosh, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? She said, well, you got Joseph and Jacob confused one time. To which I told her, darling, you're the only person in the audience that could tell between Joseph and Jacob. And if that's all I did, please don't do that again. And now I have to bring my colleague Bob Anderson. He comes out here to look after me now, so you need a lot of help. All right. Irk Russell, true story of Coach Russell. And people may not know this, he not only won a championship at the University of Georgia in 1980 as the defensive coordinator, not only won multiple championships at Georgia Southern, he won a state championship at Grady High School. And we were playing football back in those days, and we didn't know it was called, Coach Russell didn't call it the nickel defense or something like this. He called it, it's 3rd and 8, we take out a defensive tackle and we put in another defensive back. Man was way ahead of his game. But he tells this story when he finally quit coaching. He says, Harris, you know, they say you're too old to coach when you're out recruiting and the mothers start looking good to you. That's not all. He said, Harris, I coached so long that the grandmother started looking good. And I knew it was time to quit at that time. A delightful guy. And the last thing about knowing somebody, about being on a court or something like that, our son did play football at the University of Georgia and kicked from 96 to 99. And if you ever think in a pecking order in the state of Georgia, Georgia football is here and Supreme Court's way down here. We're out in South Georgia one time, and a young attorney comes up speaking down there a little bit, and he comes up before the thing starts, and he comes to me and says, "Don't I know you?" I said, "Yeah, I know you. I believe I know you." He said, "You're Hap Hines' father, aren't you?" I said, "That's right." But anyway, it is nice to be here. And since I'm here, I thought among home folks, I hope my colleagues won't get on me on this, but I'm going to give you, if you want to, just a little inside baseball as to how things are done on the Supreme Court, and then how things I anticipate are going to change in the near future, and the fairly near future about some things, and then kind of stop and kind of answer some questions. But anyway, this is to kind of start things off. I, like many of you, as a practicing attorney, argue a case before the Supreme Court. And then certainly, when I was on the trial bench, I had the Supreme Court review my work. So I thought I knew a little bit about the Supreme Court. But when I went down there, I realized I knew very little about the procedures of how a case gets there and how things are handled. So I wanted to tell you just a little bit like that, kind of, you might say, inside baseball. When a case gets to the Supreme Court, let's say it's going to be a case decided, it's going to be submitted, and it's going to be decided on briefs, or it's going to be orally argued. When that case is filed, it is actually at that time assigned to one of the members of the court. It's on a computerized wheel, and it is done that. And that case then goes to that member of the court's chambers. And what he or she does in chambers, prepare what is referred to as a submit brief or a bench brief. And the only difference between them is the nomenclature of submit or bench. Whether it's going to be decided without the intervention of oral argument, or it's going to be decided with oral argument. And what is done is not like a brief is prepared as you think of it to reach a legal conclusion. But what is done is that chambers, that justice takes them and takes the enumerations of error as set out by the appellant and lists them seriatim, 1, 2, 3, 4, and takes the responses thereof of the appellee and sets them out seriatim. So what you have is contentions and responses. And then that brief is then circulated to the other members of the court. So let's say the case is going to be argued or be argued, and that is done. And then, so when you go up there and that case is being argued, the justices have the benefit of that case, and they know who it is originally assigned to. Now, it is my understanding that that is done substantially different in the United States Supreme Court, and I will talk about that in just a little bit. But when that case is done, so you usually have, say, your morning arguments start at 10 o'clock. You have your afternoon arguments starting at 2. And let's say somebody here is arguing a case, both of you are from Cobb County. And after the 10 o'clock arguments, we go back into the robing room. And the justice to whom that case is assigned, the chief will say, Chief Justice Thompson, let's say, will say, "Harris, it's assigned to you. Give us your thoughts on the case, and what do you think we should do?" And so I'm going to pick on Toby Rogers because he's a bright. And let me say this, Toby was out there. Toby won't tell you this, but for all of our men, you know, Toby Rogers is a good guy and a good judge. He also has a very distinguished military record. Toby doesn't tell you much about that, but I thank him and all the people who've served the men and women. Thank you for what you all have done. But anyway, let's say it's Toby Rogers, and I say, well, I think Judge Rogers just nailed it. I recommend we affirm. And somebody will say, well, I agree, but I think maybe there was a little merger here in sentencing or something like that. I think we ought to affirm in part and maybe vacate in part. And we will take then a tentative decision right there. So before you get back to Marietta, a tentative decision in that case has been made. Now, having said that, that tentative decision, let's we take a vote, and let's say it's 5-2 to affirm and 2 or maybe to affirm in part and vacate in part. But generally speaking, then, when the final vote is taken in that case, in about 85 to 90% of the time, some version of that TD vote, the majority of the opinion, the emphasis of the opinion, will be sustained about 85% of the time. So you will do that. So that is something that a lot of folks don't understand, but that is how it is done. Now, let me just ask you some questions. I don't want to compare our court to the U.S. Supreme Court and kind of let you know how we do things. How many law schools do you think are represented on the Georgia Supreme Court? Oh my gosh, I'm giving my home folks this little quiz and I knew y'all were just going to eat it up. Right, 5. How many are represented on the U.S. Supreme Court?
5.
No, 3. 3. Somebody said 3. Truth be told, if Justice Ginsburg, who started at Harvard, had not transferred to Columbia, you would have 2 represented. Two actually justices on the law school would actually only be 2 law schools represented. So let me give you these. We have the following justices on the Supreme Court, and I just try to in alphabetical order. Justice Alito, Samuel Alito, is a graduate of Yale Law School. Justice Breyer is a graduate of Harvard Law School. And I might add, Justice Breyer has a brother who's a federal district court judge. I believe it's Texas. It may be California, but it may be, I believe it's Texas. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg started at Harvard, transferred to Columbia. So she's from there. Judge Kagan is from Harvard Law School. Judge Kennedy, Harvard Law School. Chief Justice John Roberts, Harvard Law School. Justice Scalia, Harvard Law School. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, Yale Law School. And Justice Clarence Thomas from Yale Law School. Albeit, he is from Pinpoint, Georgia, really close to Savannah. So he's close by. And he's claimed certainly is one of our own. But let me just say that. So having said that, there are 5 boroughs in New York City. Now, is anybody here from New York? Am I saying that right? Are there 5 boroughs in New York? Okay. We have 4 of the justices who live in New York City. The 3 female justices, Justice Ginsburg, Justice Kagan, and Justice Sotomayor, live there, as does Justice Scalia. So you have that. I believe 2 of them are originally from Northern California, and maybe the rest of them maybe live in New York State or possibly New Jersey. So they are. So they're from a smaller part. Now, I did some interesting work on this to see this on where their law, if they go to Harvard and Yale, where do their law clerks come from? I give you the answer. You know, if they go to Harvard, where do they come from? Harvard and Yale. So I went and tried to do a little research, believe it or not, on my own. Bob, I know that is dangerous when I'm doing research on my own, but I did do a little bit on my own. And I got some figures from 2003 to 2013 of where the law students, the law clerks come from. And of those law students, 101 came from Harvard, 89 from Yale, and then third was Stanford with 33. So you can see it drops way down. About half of the law students that serve as clerks on the U.S. Supreme Court come from Harvard and Yale. For a state law school, the University of Georgia has done really quite well. We have 6 members in the fairly recent history who are graduates of the University of Georgia's law school, and they have served. And they are, so we're about 14th on the ranking of doing that. Of the ones that kind of go a little bit out of the Harvard Yale access a little bit to higher law clerks, I would say probably Justice Alito and maybe also Justice Clarence Thomas. They will kind of branch out a little bit from that. Now, why is that important? And I hope we can get some more because we have wonderful law schools here. Chief Justice John Roberts, he clerked for somebody on the Supreme Court. You want to guess who that was? Chief Justice Rehnquist. And Chief Justice Rehnquist, in turn, clerked for somebody on the Supreme Court.
Warren.
No.
That's too far back.
Jackson, for Justice Jackson. And I believe Justice Breyer clerked for Justice Arthur Goldberg. So you can see that. Now, I want you to keep an eye on one person on our court and maybe 2. I'm not too sure how these things sometimes work, but let me give you Justice David Namias on our court. He was the star student for the state of Georgia. He then goes to Duke, where he is the 2nd overall honor graduate there. second undergrad. He goes to Harvard Law School, and he served on Harvard's Law Review with President Barack Obama, and he's a magna cum laude graduate of Harvard Law School. His first job in the private sector, he was hired by then practicing attorney John Roberts, now Chief Justice John Roberts, and he also then clerked for Justice Scalia. So I would say he's one person to kind of keep you. Now, when they have federal commissions and they ask people to serve from the state of Georgia, from our court, who serves on those commissions? Justice Nobbs. That's right. And it's only right that that's how it is. But those things work that way. Well, now, as I told you a little bit, looking about it, we're not only a cert court, but we have a lot of jurisdictions. But I will mention that because there's going to be, I anticipate a movement, a little bit of change in jurisdiction fairly soon on your appellate courts in Georgia. But anyway, it's my understanding the cases are handled this way on the U.S. Supreme Court when they are there. As I said, the cases are originally assigned by computer prior to oral argument in our court to one of the 7 justices. It is my understanding that when you argue a case before the U.S. Supreme Court, it is not assigned till after oral argument, okay? And the assignment takes place like this. You consider the Chief Justice always the most senior member of the court, albeit he or she may not be most senior member in point of service. So presently you consider Chief Justice Roberts the senior member of the court. So let's say they take a vote and they say the case is not assigned until after oral argument. Now my understanding is after orals take place, there's not as much conferencing that goes on the U.S. Supreme Court, say, as goes on in our court. After we take a TD vote,